All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this early Thursday morning for the Suspense Management Reports webinar. I'm Susan McDonough. I'm going to be walking us through the webinar this morning. I'm on the change management team of the Connect Carolina project. And also here today with us for the webinar, Robin Burke, Business Systems Manager for Commitment Accounting for the Connect Carolina project team, and Chris Lawless, Business Systems Analyst for Commitment Accounting as well. And then we also have Rebecca Jones, who's going to be managing the session and the chat window and watching out for your questions, and Rebecca is part of our change management team as well. So thank you to the three of you for helping us out this morning with the webinar. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. We are scheduled for 60 minutes. We probably will take all of that time between my presentation, which should be about 40 minutes, and then the rest of the time for Q&A. Like the other webinars we do like this, the audio is one way because of the large audience size. We can't open it up for audio to hear back. So you can hear us, we can't hear you, but we really do encourage your questions. It's really important that you understand the content of what we're going to be talking about today. So with that, the way we'll handle questions is you'll type your question in the chat window of the webinar. Rebecca will be monitoring that throughout my presentation, and once I'm done, we'll answer the questions in the order that we got them. If for some reason we run out of time and can't get to all of your questions, we will respond back out via email, but we will answer your questions one way or the other, so please do ask them. We do have some resources related to the content of what I'm going to be talking about today. We are recording this session, and we will post that recording on CC Info, hopefully by the end of the day, unless we run into any technical slowness with downloading the file. Usually we can get it up there by the end of the day. And then we'll also post the procedures related to the two reports that we're going to be walking you through, the funding end date notification report and the suspense analysis report. So those are the two reports that are the focus of this webinar today. So we've got step-by-step procedures, and I'll post those probably within 30 minutes of us finishing this webinar today. So you have those resources available to you. All right, topics for today. I've got 4 points. I'm going to talk just a few slides worth about suspense, payroll suspense in general, and then how it relates to our project closeout effort. Then we'll move right into the main focus of today are these two new reports that have been created for you, the funding end date notification report and the suspense analysis report, both designed to help you manage suspense and keep suspense off your payroll charges. And then I'm going to finish with just a few slides worth, kind of as a reminder and a little bit of an update about the other reports and queries that you have available to you to manage open transactions charged against your project. So I want to finish with that. So that's where we're going today. So let's dive right into payroll suspense and project closeout. Just a few slides just to calibrate everybody. First of all, what do we mean by payroll suspense? And I'm just going to go ahead and read this. I rarely just read verbatim, but I'm going to do that this time. So payroll suspense refers to the chart field string used to charge all or part of an employee's pay when the normal chart field string is missing or is in error, such as an inactive or expired chart field string. So basically, when someone's normal funding of where they should be getting paid has an issue, it's either missing a chart field or it's an error, then it goes to the suspense chart, payroll suspense chart field string, which I've listed out here for you. The thing about suspense is it's a temporary, option for putting payroll charges someplace and then fixing the funding at that point. But it allows someone to continue to get paid, but then it's on us to fix the funding of it. All right. So with that, sort of to tie in payroll suspense as it relates to our overall project closeout effort, hopefully everyone's had a chance to read this memo that came out last Friday, September 23rd. It was an email from Andy Johns, Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, regarding project closeout. Well, the memo covered a lot of points regarding how we're managing contracts and grants going forward. The main thrust of it is that we're tightening the management of contracts and grants due to regulatory changes, tightening competition for research dollars, and basically just because we want to be awesome. We are tightening the way we manage contracts and grants, and managing suspense is a part of that. So to support that effort and the project closeout effort, and related to today's webinar, are a few things that you should be aware of that closely tie into the two reports that we're going to walk you through today. So one is beginning with the B5 payroll, so in September, any chart field string with an inactive combo code, that payroll charge went to suspense. Okay, that's the first change. Second is that EPAR actions require funding end dates to be populated on cost share sources. So that's a new thing that wasn't required before, but now any EPAR action on cost share sources require you putting in a funding end date. And then the third thing, which hasn't happened yet, but it will in just about a month here, projected to start with the first payroll in November, payroll charges with an expired funding end date will resume going to suspense. Okay, so a little bit of history here. It's a normal business process for charges with expired funding end dates to go to suspense. But as of the payroll of May 29th, 2015, so a year and a few months ago, we stopped sending things to suspense based on funding end date. We were in a new system, and to manage getting used to the new system, we stopped that. We are resuming that projected the first payroll in November. Okay, so if you have funding end dates expired, they will start hitting your suspense. So hence the two reports to help you manage that. Another point just about suspense in general and why these reports have been designed and will be useful to you is around the effort certification process, or the ECERT process. So once you have an employee certify their effort, it's now going to be really hard to change that after the fact. And so you really want to manage your suspense, and just know that once somebody certifies their effort, it's going to be really hard to change that. And then what would happen is those charges are going to get charged to your department rather than to a project, right? So just some notes about why managing suspense is going to be really important, ever more important going forward. And here's just some links I wanted to put out here. We wanted to put out here for you. I'll show them again at the end. But there's some more information about the university's policy around suspense. Here's the link, and some additional reference tools. In addition to the reports that we're going to talk about today, there's the link there as well. Okay. So just a little stage setting for why managing suspense is important, and why we have designed these two reports to help you manage that effort. All right, so let's jump into these reports. So there are three suspense reports, three key ones. The two new ones I'm going to walk us through today, but you have three ones that holistically will help you manage suspense. And one is designed to prevent, it's a report to prevent future suspense charges, and then two, to help you correct charges that are already in suspense. Okay, so the one to prevent future suspense charges is the funding end date notification report. That's the new one of the two new ones we'll talk about today. And then the two that you have to manage charges already in suspense are the current suspense charges report in PAT, which we've had for a while, and hopefully everyone's accustomed to using that. And then we have this new one I'm going to talk about today called the Suspense Analysis Report. So these combined are your tool for managing things that are already in suspense so you know what you need to correct. Right, so those are the three reports taken together that you have to manage suspense. All right, so let's look at the Funding End Date Notification Report. Let's just look at first what this report does. It shows appointments and positions in which the current or future funding, so in other words how a person is funded, contains the combo code or chart field string that has one of these things basically wrong with it. One is the combo code is inactive. Two is you have that funding end date that is going to expire by whatever date you run the report. So we'll see in a minute how you run the report. You put in whatever date you want to put in out into the future. So it will show you, things that will expire by that future date that you run the report. And then the third, it will also show things that are already in suspense based on current funding. So this report, the key thing to remember about this report is it's showing you current funding that's causing things to go to suspense. Okay? So with that idea, what you need to do with the report results, and I'm going to say this about 5 times during this webinar because it's kind of the main thing to take away is what you do with the report results that you get from all three of these reports. But for the funding end date report, those rows, again, because it's showing you the current funding, you want to enter a fund swap EPAR form to move that funding to an allowable chart field string. Okay, that's the biggest thing. And then anything on that report that's showing that's currently in suspense, you would need to do a PAT tool, use the PAT tool to correct any past charges. Depending on what your report results show, you have to take one of those two actions. All right, so let's look at this report. First point I want to make is that this report and also the suspense analysis report are in Connect Carolina. They are not in InfoPort. So they're in Connect Carolina. Here's the navigation. We go main menu, HR payroll menu, payroll accounting reports, and then funding end date notification. And also the suspense analysis report is in the same place. So that's one easy thing for us. All right, so then once you navigate there, you're going to see this funding end date notification page. And this report uses a feature in Connect Carolina called Run Control. So let me just say a word about what Run Control is in case you haven't used it before. But it's a tool in Connect Carolina that runs processes. And one of the things it can do is run reports for us. And sort of how the feature works, anytime you're doing something that uses Run Control, you have to give it a name. See here in this name I've called mine My Reports. And whatever name you give it, it's only visible to you. So you can call it whatever you want. You can call it Suspense, you can call it Susan's Reports, whatever you want to call it. You can't have any spaces. See how I've put an underscore under Mine Report, so it's just something to keep in mind. And the other thing is that you can just create one name for both reports. You don't have to create a new name for each different report that uses run control. You can if you want, but it's not necessary. All right. So like in other things you've probably noticed in Commit Carolina, you do, like the first time you come into the page, if you haven't created a name before, you want to click the Add a New Value and then name your report and click Add. But like in this example, let's say I've already created my report, so I just click Find an Existing Value, my name of my report shows up, and then I click Search. So it's the first time you want to do the add. All right, and then what happens is it brings up the report that I'm running, which is the funding end date notification report. You'll see that if I use my reports and I'm running the suspense analysis report in a minute, the page for suspense analysis report would show up using the same my report's name. All right. So the filters on this report are departments, so you can run it by individual or range of departments, or you can run it for a whole school or division, up to you. Enter in the fiscal year. So we're in fiscal year 2017, so most of the year you will only be able to run it for that current fiscal year. With each fiscal year, right around the May time frame, you will be able then to run it for the future fiscal year. So, come May of next year, you would be able to also put in 2018. But, for most of our fiscal years, you'll run it for that fiscal year. But the fiscal year field is required. And then put in a forecast date. So up to you how far out you want to see this information. That's based on you and your department and your business and how far out you want to see the information. And then this report option field is you only have the option of report. And then you click Run. And Run is what kicks off, shows you the process scheduler request page, and then you click OK. You don't have to do anything on this page, just click OK. And that'll kick off your process running, start it to run. So at this point, this would be a good slide to pay attention to here because you're going to see this screen right here. And what it's going to show you is this process instance. And it would really be helpful and make it easier for you to write down this process instance number or copy it to your text screen or something like that, because with this number it's the easiest way to find your report. Because at this point, to see your report, you'd go to Report Manager, and there's two ways to go to the Report Manager from here. You can either click this Report Manager, or you can navigate to it from the home page. And we wanted to show you this navigation because, if there's a time delay between when you run the report and then you go back in to see it, you'll probably be on the home page or somewhere else and need to navigate. So here's the navigation: Main menu, HR Payroll menu, Reporting Tools, Report Manager. Okay, and that will bring you to this page here, but let me show you the search filters here. Same search filters. But see how you have folder, which we don't use. You have instance, which is your process instance, and you could enter a range if you've run this multiple times, but probably most of the time you're going to be looking for a specific report. Name would be your onion. If you wanted to run it, for all the reports that you've run. You could enter in a created on date, like the date you ran the report. And then this last field here, this drop-down menu either shows last or date range. So if you leave it to last, you can put in a number here, and then your menu options here like days, hours, weeks, and months. So hours, you can get pretty close and tight with it. But if you could also change this last to date range and then put in a date range. So some options there of how far back you want the list of reports to show here. But really to get to a specific run, the easiest thing to do is jot down that instance number, put it in, click refresh, and then when you click refresh, see how this one report comes up, that what I just ran. I click this link, and then it's going to give me these 3 links here. Your report is in the CSV file, so always look for the CSV file, okay? And then click it. You can either open or save the CSV file, or Excel rather, so I always save it and then open it from a download file. So let's look at this, okay? This is what the report is showing us. This is what your spreadsheet is going to show. My ink blots here are to blot out names and protect the guilty. You know, of course, if you're looking at this in real life, the rows are going to project out, you know, across the page, but of course we're looking at slide real estate here. So key points about the report results here. First thing, the error type, okay, this funding end date notification report is going to have 3 possible error types on it. So remember, we talked about inactive combo codes, funding end dates, and things already in suspense. So you have an error code for one of those 3 scenarios on here. So project ending means that, you know, this will start going to suspense based on expired funding end date, and you have however much time you have to do your EPAR fund swap form and change the funding by that date. So that's what project ending means. Suspense combo means that it's already in suspense based on the chart field string. And then inactive combo, were it to show here, would mean that it's going to suspense because the combo code is inactive. All right? So you know, train your eye to eyeball the reasons why something is in suspense, or getting ready to go to suspense by the date indicated. All right, the funding end date here, this is the last day here the pay is allowed on the normal funding source. After that, it'll be charged to suspense. All right, percent of salary, that means this amount is, you know, that percent of that amount to the total of salary. And then just a note on this report that it's possible you will get rows that are blank with the employee information. So the employee ID and the employee name would be blank, and that first thing, those rows won't go to suspense because there's nobody in that position or employment, so nothing was paid there, so nothing is going to suspense. However, you know, it means that nobody's in that position or appointment. So just something to pay attention to. If you look at it and you see that, you know, that position should be abolished, then contact HR and they'll work through that process. If the appointment, DBT, Department Budget Table, should be inactivated, then enter a remedy ticket so the analyst can have a look at that. All right, so that would be normal to see on this report. All right, so I told you I would say this about 5 times this morning, so I think this is like time number 2. But you've run your report and you want to take action. So the funding end date notification report shows things that sometime in the future are going to go to suspense if you do not change the funding. So you need to enter a funding swap EPAR form to prevent things from going to suspense. And to the degree that that report shows something already in suspense, meaning you've got charges that are already charged to suspense based on current funding, then you need to do a PAT report to fix the past. But in that case, you'd also want to do an EPAR form to fix the future. Okay? So in some rows, you might need to do both actions to fix the past and fix the future. All right, let's move on to suspense analysis, the suspense analysis report. So first thing I want to do is sort of talk about the 2 reports that we have that show suspense charges that have already been taken place. They've already been charged to suspense. And the first one is the current suspense charges report in PAT, which we've had for a while, and then this new one we're going to talk about today, which is the suspense analysis report. All right, also shows payroll charges already in suspense. So this is really a complementary report to the current suspense charges report. It provides additional detail, and what I'm going to do when I run through the suspense analysis report, I'll then show you, I'll do a compare of what that report would have shown you on the current suspense charges report and what it shows on the suspense analysis report. So you can see that side by side. But basically the suspense analysis report shows you additional detail from the current suspense charges report, like the chart field string, the funding end date, and the number of days the charges have been in suspense. All right? So the recommended approach to using these two reports together is to start with the current suspense charges report and then go to the suspense analysis report to see additional detail where you want to or need to see that additional detail. All right? And then another note is it's possible for charges to appear on the current suspense charges report but not on the suspense analysis report. So the current suspense charges report shows everything in suspense. The suspense analysis report shows the suspense that break the principal rules that we've talked about, like inactive combo codes, expired funding, and date. There's some other like one-off scenarios that departments do some different things using the suspense chart field string that causes things to show up into suspense. Much less common than these principal reasons. But your goal is to move everything off suspense, everything that you see on the current suspense charges report. All right. But with that, I just want to mention, talk about one thing, just to keep in mind that, you know, you have 90 days by policy to move suspense charges off of suspense. But the current suspense charges report shows all things in suspense since we went live, you know, coming up on 2 years ago. And while our overall goal is to move everything out of suspense, you know, you might want to think twice about if you run this report and you see something that's literally 2 years old sitting in suspense. You know, example, you know, something in November. It might be better just to leave it there, okay? I'll leave that up to you to decide, but, you know, we definitely want to keep, you know, current things, get that off of suspense, but if you've got something where, you know, we've closed, you know, it's 2 years old, you might just want to leave it sit there so you don't impact in a problematic way your budget numbers for a past year or current year or anything like that. And just be aware those kinds of submissions would probably get looked at and scrutinized a little bit more closely. All right. That's that. So let's look at the suspense analysis report. It'll look very similar in navigation to the one we just looked at. So the other thing is, just like the funding end date notification report, this one's in Connect, Carolina, not Infoport, and the navigation is the same: main menu, HR payroll, payroll accounting reports, UNC suspense analysis. All right, and then we enter or find our run control name. So you can see that I've used the same name. I'm just running a different report, but I can do that for any report. And when I'm running it under my ID for anything that uses run control. It's just the way it works. All right, and so notice I'm running the suspense analysis report, so this time this screen comes up. And my filters are, I can run by pay run ID, so any specific payroll, or a date range. Now I've put this out into the future, but because this report shows you know, things already in suspense, it will show you what has currently hit suspense, not anything, you know, that payroll that hasn't run yet. And then you can run it just like the funding end date notification report. You can run it by a specific department or for a school. And then we click run, and then we click OK. And then at that point, our report is running. you want to jot down this process instance number, and then you want to go to your report manager to actually look at your report results. You can do that immediately here if you're on the page. You need to give it, a minute or two for the process to finish running, but then you can go to Report Manager and look it up. If you want to come into the navigation from your home page, same navigation to Report Manager. The searching for your report is the same. The easiest way to get there is through the process instance number and click Refresh. And then click your report. Notice that here's my process instance number over here that I searched by. On the suspense analysis report, you also want to click the CSV file, but this one will actually produce 2 links to a CSV file. They're both the same. They will show you the same thing, but just so you know that that's not an error, that's just the way it works. But you can click either one. You can open or save your file, and here's what we get on the suspense analysis report. So this, obviously these fields would be running all the way across the page, but it shows you the pay run ID, the payroll dates, the department, the employee who's Jane Doe. I just, instead of Inc., we called her Jane. And the position number, and then the combo code here that caused this line to go to suspense. Okay. Here's the funding end date, the last day that after that date it's going to start going to suspense. This is the percent of this amount to this total salary, to total pay. And this is the total suspense amount. And this is the number of days that this has been in suspense. Okay, so this is one thing that the current suspense charges report does not give you. And also notice that we've got 3 rows for Jane that are in suspense, so breaking out the total, right? So that is what that is showing you. Now, as I mentioned before, just to look at the current suspense charges report and the suspense analysis report, like side by side, were you to run this for Jane, Jane's name would be here, and this is what you would get on the current suspense charges report. We see that we have $332.55 in suspense. We run the same thing for using the suspense analysis report, and we get some more information in addition to just the $332.55. We get the chart field string, we get the funding end date, and we get this amount broken out into taxes, earning, and deductions. Okay, so it's giving you more detail to help you manage this thing, and it's also telling you how long that's been in suspense, because remember you have the 90 days. All right. Actions to take. I think this is the 3rd time. After this, we've got 2 more times to go as to actions to take. So for rows on the current suspense charges report, remember those are charges already in suspense, so you need to use the PAT tool to get them off. And if there's any charges on there for current funding, then you would need to do a fund swap to prevent future charges from going to suspense. All right. So to review all 3 reports, let's just look at this one more time. I've been through the 2 reports, and then this one also referencing and what it shows you and what you need to do with the results. You've got the current suspense charges report showing you charges already in suspense. And to fix things you see there, you correct rows using PAT, and for any funding that will continue, enter a fund swap EPAR form. Then we've got the suspense analysis report, also shows you charges already in suspense, just like the current suspense charges report. But that will give you the reason, why it's in suspense, and also the aging, and also the combo code. All right, but to remedy those rows, we do the same thing as you would do on the current suspense charges report. So PAT to fix the past, EPAR to fix the future. All right, and then 3rd, we have the fund date funding end date notification report, which shows current funding that's causing things to go to suspense. So mostly there, it's about doing a fund swap to change something so it doesn't hit suspense. But to the degree you've already got something in suspense, and of course you need to do a pass. All right? So one tool to fix the future, another tool to fix the past. All right. In the home stretch, guys, stick with me. You're doing great. So last thing I want to talk about is open transactions, also in support of, closing out projects and making sure that you don't have transactions sitting there incomplete. This is at the OSR symposium, in one of the presentations, we mentioned some queries that were in development. Those are still in development yet, so I wanted to just remind everybody the queries that we have available that would help you manage all the different finance transactions that would be hitting your project and making sure that they're complete. And so this one is for vouchers, and see, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you can see this. The name of the query here is for vouchers that will show you vouchers that are not posted and or not paid. So if you're wondering what's hitting your project that hasn't been paid or posted, this one is the one you want to use. And also here, I have this bullet here. We have a manual on CC Info called Preparing for Year-End Close that shows you how to run a query, lists all these queries in all the different fields. So that's your reference for that. All right, the next one I wanted to mention is for journals. To see a journal that's not posted, this would be the query that you want to run. To see any requisitions that you would have entered into e-procurement, this one will show any rec and any status, so you can filter it for things that are not complete. We have two for purchase orders, so purchase orders that have any edit errors on them or purchase orders that have any budget errors on them, you can run those two queries. So here's, with these 5 queries, we'll show you a lot of information about any finance transactions that you have hitting your project that might not be complete yet, okay? And then also wanted to run through another way to see open encumbrances against a project, because I know this gets asked quite a bit. So we've presented this before, but just sort of as reinforcement, you can use the budget's overview page to find open encumbrances. Here's the navigation up here at the top to the budget's overview page. If you put in a description, anything you want, search by OSR parent, and then put in your project ID. If you have anything sitting in the encumbrances section here, that means that you have something still open as a PO. If you click it, then and click this checkbox here, so if you click this link, this screen opens up. You click this open encumbrances, it's going to show you anything that's still open. Now, one thing you really do need to remember if you're using this page is that there's some things from when we went live that will show up on this page, but they'll have a 0 amount. So obviously that's not hitting your encumbrance budget. But anything that looks like a current purchase order with a current purchase order ID and has an amount will be an open encumbrance. So that's another way to find your open encumbrances using Connect Carolina. All right, just wanted to remind and refresh everybody's memory about that, because it's also an important part of project closeout in addition to suspense. All right, so let's summarize. You did great. Let's just summarize what we have been through. We have talked about suspense being a temporary expense option used when the normal funding source on payroll is in error, is either expired or inactive. Suspense charges need to be moved to an allowable funding source within 90 days. So please use that funding end date notification report to help you do that. Starting with the B5 payroll, so in September, charges with inactive combo codes started going to suspense. So once you start running these reports, you might find some situations like that. And then projected to start in November, payroll with expired funding end dates, according, will start going to suspense as of November. Okay, then the 3 reports we talked about. The funding end date notification report shows current and future funding that will go to suspense. The current suspense charges report shows past payroll charge to suspense, as does the suspense analysis report. Except with the suspense analysis report, you get additional detail, like the chart field string, like the aging, and it's broken out into the different payroll lines. All right, and I think this qualifies as the 5th time I will mention this. You need to enter fund swap EPAR to prevent future payroll, and use PAT to correct the past, okay? PAT never fixes the future, okay? All right, and then open transactions, I mentioned briefly. Use those queries out there to show you your different, finance transactions. And then you've also got that budgets overview, which is a really nice way to see open encumbrances as well. All right, so that brings me to almost the end. Just a reminder that we've got these reference materials that will be posted today, hopefully with the webinar recording today, unless we run into some technical issues. If not, then tomorrow or the next day. And then remember, there's these university policies related to suspense out there, as well as some additional reference material. And also, these reports will be available as of tomorrow, right? So look for these reports. Will be in production as of tomorrow. Okay, that's the 2 reports I walked us through. The funding end date notification report and the suspense analysis report will be in production as of tomorrow. All right, so with that, I am going to turn it over to Rebecca to tell us what questions we have.
Okay, we have our first question from Chase, and he wants to know if you can clarify the 2nd bullet on slide 8, saying that salary that would have been charged to a project is charged to the department instead after effort certification.
Okay, Chase, I'm going to use an example to explain that bullet point. So let's say you have an employee being funded by a project and the funding end date is March 31st, 2016. You're expecting an extension, but the extension is not received in time for the April monthly payroll distribution. So that employee's paycheck for that portion of the funding goes to suspense for April. But then by the time the May payroll rolls around, you've gotten your extension and you've done your funding swap to move them from suspense back to the project. However, that April paycheck is still sitting on suspense because you need to use PAT to correct it. So let's just say that that slips off your radar and you don't go do the PAT to move them off suspense back to the project when they could have justifiably been on the project. And another effort period rolls around and the effort's certified and that detail is never attended to move that April paycheck back to the project. It's possible that that whole process could complete and the opportunity would be missed to move that employee's pay back to the project. And that would explain why effort that would have otherwise been charged to the project would end up remaining on the department's budget. Because there's going to be a point in time when you wouldn't be allowed to move that paycheck to the project.
Great. We have another question from TLC. Where is this report located?
So again, the reports will be available as of tomorrow. We're putting them in production tonight, so just for that process to run, so look for them tomorrow. And just to remind everybody, these reports are in Connect Carolina, so let me get to that page here. Here's the navigation. to that. And I will, for sure, post the procedures within, probably 30 minutes of finishing our session today. And those have the step-by-step, including the navigation of where you'll find those reports starting tomorrow.
Okay, we have a question from Terry. If we have old charges in suspense that need to stay there, can we move budget to that chart string to offset the deficit?
Yes, you may move budget to that chart string to offset the deficit. You also could use PAT to move them from suspense to your regular F&A chart fill string. Either way would work.
We have a question from RB. When will these reports become available?
So these reports will be available as of tomorrow morning.
A question from Terry. How do we get access to these reports if we don't have access now?
So the people that were invited to this webinar are those who are either a PAT Basic Originator, Advanced, or Super User. And that is the list that we are going to give these reports to. So if you're already a PAT Basic, Advanced, or Super User, you will already automatically have access to the report as of tomorrow morning.
Question from RB. Will it go to the funding department or the home department's suspense regarding Chase's question?
Suspense goes to the home department of the employee.
Question from Chase. Will we still see the payroll transactions and InfoPort on the suspense sources?
So Chase, I'm going to need to know which exact report you're referring to in InfoPort. If you could type that into the chat window, it'll help us answer the question.
Question from RB, is there a way to run the funding end date report to allow us to run it on all who are funded by our department or the department the employee is housed in?
The way you run that funding end date notification report is by where the employee is housed in.
Okay, we have a question from Chase. What about fringe transactions that are posted to suspense without corresponding salary?
The funding and date notification report won't show you that, but suspense analysis and the current suspense charges report will show you anybody who has just fringes only in suspense, and will show you which pay period caused it to go to suspense.
We have a message. I think Chase is responding to your other question. Transactions, F&A, expenses, source, 1410.
Yes, you'll see the suspense charges on the Transactions tab in InfoPort for the accounting period they were originally posted in, and then you'll see the charges credited to that suspense on the Transactions tab in the month that you were able to retro them off suspense.
Okay, we have a question from Patrick. Are the slides for this presentation available for future reference? A list for the attendees?
Yes, we'll put the slide deck up as well.
A question from Chase, but we can't use PAT to move fringe only. Does the college need to do that for us?
You have to be a PAT Advanced user to be able to move fringe only, and so if you're currently a basic user, you'll need to reach out to someone in the college to work with them to get that PAT transaction completed for you. Good job, Chase.
Thank you, Chase. I don't have any other questions right now.
Okay, well, we'll just hang out for a little bit, a couple minutes to see if y'all think of any more questions. And I'll use the space just to remind everybody we are going to post these documents, the recording of the webinar, the PowerPoint deck, and the two procedures, one for the funding end date notification report and one for the suspense analysis report will be up on CC Info under resources. So you can, there's two search fields. There's the main, search field up at the top of CC Info. You can put in the keywords there, and it'll come up. Or you could go to the resources tab and search from there. So, did that buy us time to get more questions? No more questions. We'll still give it another minute or two to see if any more questions. Okay, somebody's typing, so we will see what they have.
We have a question from Walter. Suspense questions after the presentation can also be, oh, that's not a question. Suspense questions after the presentation can also be sent to ca_payroll@unc.edu. Thank you, Walter.
Yes, thank you, Walter. Good reminder. So there's and that was on the memo from Andy Johns, that email where you can send questions about payroll suspense. Once again, it's ca_payroll@unc.edu. Thank you for that reminder, Walter. That's very helpful. Okay. All right. All right. We'll give it about maybe 30 more seconds for any. Okay. Someone's typing, so we'll see what they have.
I believe it's pronounced Kirstein. Will biweekly pay that covers an end date automatically hit suspense, or how will it be handled?
If the biweekly crosses that funding end date, the portion that's allowed to be charged for that biweekly will be charged to the project, and anything after that funding end date will be charged to suspense. So we can prorate the pay period accordingly.
Okay, we've got another question coming in. Okay, I guess somebody answered their own question. That's no longer coming in. Okay, we'll give it about 30 more seconds. And if you think of a question after we sign off here, just remember you can always use that email, ca_payroll@unc.edu, and that email address is also in the memo that came out from Andy John last Friday. So if you haven't had a chance to read that in detail, it would be very good to do that soon. Okay. All right, we don't have any more questions, so we'll officially close the session. We thank everybody for your participation and attention this morning. Thank you to Chris and Robin and Rebecca. And with that, we will officially close. Thank you, everybody.